Daily Faceoff Insider Frank Seravalli joins us from high atop the Vegas Strip. A fantastic view behind you, Frank. And how are you feeling here on draft day on a scale of 1 to 10? How busy is the flurry of activity going to be around the league?
It's about a 6 right now. I would say that it's going to be frothing towards an 8 by the time we get to 7 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Mountain. So just a few hours from now, there's going to be all eyes on those first 3 picks, and then I think there's a real chance that all hell breaks loose.
Okay, Tyler Mulick is in. Frank announced the Campbell trade. Why haven't the Oilers gone through the process of formally buying him out yet? Is it because that's maybe not going to be the move? Is there maybe a chance they find a trade somehow?
I don't. You'd have to attach some serious assets to do it. And the Oilers don't have very many to begin with in terms of draft picks. They don't have a first this year. They don't have a second next year. At what point are you comfortable trading away your future? And I don't mean like the future in terms of like 5 years from now. I mean your future assets that you have to improve this team at a future deadline. I mean, at some point you just become completely it's capped out. It's asset. You know, you're in the situation that the Florida Panthers have been in. What's the term I used? Shopping at Gucci with a Walmart wallet. It's just you have no cap space, you have no draft picks, you have no prospects. Where do you think players are going to materialize from to improve your team? So the only logical conclusion to me is Jack Campbell, unless there's something in this market that I'm not seeing. He has to be trending towards a buyout.
Yeah, I agree. You look at their picks for next year, they have a first, no second, a third, but no fourth or fifth. And this is a team that is going to have to be in a position to be buyers again at next year's deadline. So I don't see them going and making any sort of a big splash a la Nikolai Ehlers. I know the fan base has been kind of talking about him. Like, I don't think they're going out and doing something like that, because I think the smarter play is to honestly hold on to your assets for this little period here, maybe do what you need to do in free agency, and then just keep this team intact, reassess at the deadline, add what you need to add at that point.
Yeah, that's exactly how I look at it. And in the meantime, Kevin Weeks just reported in the last 10 minutes or so that Cal Pickard has agreed to a 2-year extension. And you look at that and you say, okay, well, Pickard is obviously the guy that they trust to play behind Stu Skinner. Well, then that just further makes the Jack Campbell decision that much easier, does it not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Liam, what do you got, buddy?
I guess just moving away from the Oilers, looking at the top of your free agents board, you look at a guy like Sam Reinhart. I know you spoke about it a bit on the DFL rundown, but what does his future look like right now? Do you see him going back to the Panthers?
I do. Look, it hasn't been easy. It's been complicated. It's been a long, drawn-out process. I think the Panthers have had a really significant offer on the table for a long time. I wondered, on the rundown, the impact of what winning the Stanley Cup means, not just for the player who obviously, you want to stay and get as many of those experiences as possible, but also for the team. Are you sure that you want to, even though there's a guy that scored the game-winning goal in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final after a 59-goal season, are you sure that that's the long-term deal that you want to sign, given, some of the other needs that you have? So I think it's open for debate. I think it's a strong likelihood that, over the next 3 days that they find a way to work something out with Reinhart. I'm much less confident that they can do the same with Brandon Montour.
Oh, interesting. Let's stick in Florida. Steven Stamkos is going to be testing free agency on July 1. I would imagine the market for him will be very, very strong. Is there anywhere, and obviously no teams aren't talking to him or to his camp, but is there somewhere out there that makes sense to you if he were to leave Tampa?
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of places that you could link him to. Detroit is one. The Steve Yzerman connection makes a lot of sense. I think let me throw you another name that's a bit surprising on the Patrick Kane, or this is not for Steven Stamkos. This is for Patrick Kane, actually. So that's what type of draft day is. Stamkos, well, and you can ask me about that in a second. Stamkos, what about a place like Nashville? What about pick another team that's sort of on the rise that has cap space? If you're Utah, would you make a run at him? And here's one other thing that I would say. Steven Stamkos has been down this path before, and I'm not saying he's definitely coming back. That's not at all what my message is. But he got to the interview period before, and he was courted by all these teams, and he ended up coming back to Tampa, and he signed a deal that still ended up being with the no state income tax, the best deal on the market, whether it looked that way on the cap or not. I view statements like that from agents at this time of year, especially with a player like with Stamkos, a client like Stamkos, that it's a game of chicken. Like, I also, in the same exact breath, look at Nikita Zadorov in Vancouver. The Canucks, Patrick Kane, in the last 40 minutes said, hey, we loved Zadorov. We tried really hard on him, but he's decided to go in a different direction. And I just find that timing of all of this to be really interesting. Like, they're pushing to try and get something done. And the game of chicken is, hey, you can walk, like, for sure, but you better get a better deal for your client out there than what we're offering you. And that same conversation's going on right now with Jake Gensel and the Carolina Hurricanes. They have put 8 times 8 on the table. He went, they had conversations for the last few weeks, and with the Canes, Gensel said, I'm looking for 8 times 8. Now they've hit the number, and yet they haven't gotten a handshake agreement on it because they're so close to free agency now. It's almost like, hey, let me just dip my toe in the water and see what else is out there. So I guess what I'm saying is things change in 5 minutes. Be really careful about, saying what's concrete and what isn't, because I'm not entirely sure that all these things are going to end up becoming true.
Fair. What was the note on Patrick Kane?
I just heard one other team that's going to try and make a run at him, and this was a total surprise to me, was the Montreal Canadiens.
Wow.
I mean, you never know. Like, you never know who's going to be in the mix when it comes to free agent day. There's always tons of possibilities, and we're still a couple days away from that.
Frank, if you don't mind, I'd like to do my Sherwood Ford Giant question of the show with you, and it is this. It's a bit of a two-parter, but it's brought to you by Sherwood Ford, the Giant. They get you back on the road real quick through many different ways in their fantastic service department, whether it's the mobile service van, whether it's the valet service, whether it's the countless bays. They can get you back on the road quickly. Also, shout out to Sherwood Power Sports and Marine, your one-stop shop for everything fishing. Frank, it's a two-parter. It's this. What's the most likely move we see from the Oilers before free agency? And what's one thing that's maybe not likely, but is still realistic that could happen? It's like mine was going to be Jack Campbell buyout for the likely, a Vander Kane trade for the unlikely, but in the realm of possibilities.
I don't know. I don't really see an Evander Kane trade. Like, you're dealing with a distressed asset right now. Yes, he's got an ability to be a game breaker, but he's also been really banged up. The last 2 playoff runs when the Oilers needed him most, wasn't it his hand against Vegas and core muscle injury that he needs surgery on in the Stanley Cup final that caused him to miss the most important periods of time of the season.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how to handicap that one. Flexibility is going to be key. I'd say it's more likely than not that Kane is back, particularly given the surgery. So I'm going to say likely is the Oilers re-sign Janmark, Perry, and Brown. And what was the other category? What did you call it?
Not likely, but still in the realm of possibilities. Of possibility.
Not likely, but still in the realm of possibility, meaning greater than 0% chance.
Yeah.
I've talked about Darnell Nurse, but I think they probably have to address the Cody Ceci situation.
I agree. They need to create cap space, and that's a spot where, like, again, I don't know what the market's going to be like for Vinny, and maybe they ultimately go start looking in some other areas, but if you can get rid of that 3.25 from CC, bring back Vinny for 2.25, all of a sudden you've built yourself this little $1 million worth of wiggle room, right?
No. Desharnais is not anywhere near 2.25.
Where do you think he ends up then?
He's in the low to mid ones.
Oh, really?
I think they can think whatever they want. That's what I perceive the market to be. I think he's 1.5 tops. If you can offload CC, get Vinny for 1.5, like, he spent time with Darnell Nurse this year, and I thought it was good time during the regular season. At least I know he wasn't in the lineup at the end there, but I wouldn't hate going in. Totally exposed in the playoffs with his limitations.
But do you hate, like, to me, when I look at next season, again, I keep looking at get to the deadline and then see what you need to upgrade then. Like, I would be fine going into next year with a blue line that's Bouchard, Ekholm, Nurse, Desharnais, Kulak, Broberg on his offside. And then you sit there and, hey, if you can go get a big name, the Ekholm-esque right shot D-man at the deadline for your first, you go do that then when the market's maybe a little bit more robust. Or do you think there's a chance in free agency they want to go look at a Brett Pesce, Sean Walker type?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be in the mix for that, but I understand your thought process for sure.
Liam, anything else?
Just one from me, Frank. It's been 3 years in a row now. The Oilers have ran back essentially the same group and lost to the eventual Stanley Cup champion. Obviously, this year was a little bit different. Do you think something needs to change this year? They can't bring guys like Fogo back, for example. They need to add a little bit more to the core to get themselves over that hump, or do you think it's okay to run essentially the same group back for a fourth year?
No, I think for the most part, the core makes sense, right? Like it's as complete, it's as strong as any team in the league. I think you're constantly trying to tweak on other parts of your lineup. Like as the playoffs went along, Liam, we saw there were varying sort of holes that popped up at times. We just talked about the defense pairs and some of the potential openings there, but you need a fourth line center. Who's that going to be? Do you have an internal candidate in Lane Peterson that steps up right from Jump Street in training camp? If that hole's filled, then it's one less that then you need to think about. What happens if Janmark suddenly becomes too expensive or Connor Brown doesn't fit cap wise? Like I think there's lots of things to sort of, mess around the margins with, but I don't think the Oilers need any sort of overall overhaul or reconstruction. And part of the reason for that is they're as close as any team's ever come to winning the Stanley Cup and not doing it. Game 7, 15 wins of the 16 required. I think this team's in a really solid position. It doesn't mean you sit back and you just rest. Mm-hmm. It just means you continue to try and find new ways. And you also need a little bit of luck along the way. Like we've talked injury report and Draisaitl and McDavid. Like, what if Kane is healthy? How different does that team look in the postseason? Like, there are always what ifs, and that's really the one difference from the Florida Panthers year over year. 13 players were injured in last year's Cup final for the Panthers. This year, they were remarkably healthy.
Yeah. Frank, appreciate your time as always. I know there's stuff going on. Puckpedia sent out a tweet saying apparently Alexander Tessier has gone to the Blues and signed a 2-year deal with them as a part of the trade, $2.1 million cap hit. So things are only getting busier, Frank. So we appreciate you carving out some time for us.
Yep. See you guys.
What's up, Nation citizens? If you like that video, then you need to be subscribed to the Oilers Nation YouTube. Podcasts, live shows, exclusive interviews, and analysis. Everything you need from your favorite voices at Oilers Nation. And you don't want to miss any of it, so hammer that subscribe button.